Rolex just released their 2024 Watches and Wonders novelties. New GMT in steel, new Platinum 1908, and a solid gold deep sea dweller. I'll be in Geneva over the weekend, and next week I'll have more to say about some of the specific watches, but right now it's time for a Rolex Lineup market update. Where are they going? What are their priorities? And what does it mean for watch lovers? Let's dive in. First, a quick overview of the changes to the lineup. New to Rolex is primarily the new GMT in black and gray that is now available in a full steel model. Then there's the full gold deep sea dweller and the Platinum 1908 with the guilloche dial. On top of that, a gem set Daytona, a Jubilee Sky Dweller in rose gold, and some variants of the day dates. That's more or less it. Additionally, they discontinued the Yachtmaster 2, the Anniversary Daytona, and some dial options for the Datejust. Compare all that to last year, where they released the Yachtmaster in titanium, the new 1908, the gold and two-tone GMTs with grey and black bezel, a new steel Daytona, an Anniversary Daytona, and a whole lot of interesting dials, including the Jigsaw. This year is significantly less interesting. Some would say it's boring, even, overall. And it is. But why? To pass the logic behind Rolex releases, we're digging out my classic Rolex lineup overview. We all know that Rolex has the professional line and the classic line. Ostensibly sports watches on the one hand and more dressy watches on the other. I've always put them on a continuum myself, from dressy on the one end with the 1908 as the clearest dress watch in their lineup and the Explorer 2 as the most toolish of tool watches in steel in their lineup. In the middle, you have the OPs, the Datejust, and the GMT. These three lines, and potentially also the Daytona, are likely the hottest and most contemporarily popular watches Rolex has. As you move to the extremes, Rolex models become, comparatively at least, less desirable. There's two things to take note of. They add nothing new to the lineup. There are no new models at all. But they did do something that was both surprising and unsurprising. The GMT was a partial surprise in one sense, and the surprise was that they didn't discontinue the Pepsi GMT. It's not that I bought into the grey market dealers predicting that the Pepsi would be discontinued, but the surprise was that Rolex, outside of the Oyster Perpetuals and the Datejusts, don't do variety at the entry level. The Daytona is available in two options in steel. The Explorer has one option. The Explorer 2 has two options. The Yachtmaster in steel has slightly more when it comes to sizes, but basically two options. The Submariner has three: date, no date, and the green. The GMT now has four entry options. It's the entry steel sports or professional model with most variety in terms of dials and or bezel combinations. This is a little unusual for Rolex because variety is typically linked to precious metals. Adding that variety, I think, is to take some of the pressure off of the Pepsi and the Batman in terms of demand. I definitely see a scenario where spreading the demand for GMTs across more variants takes some of the pressure off of the most popular models. It does depend on whether Rolex is allocating more capacity to the GMT or not, but I do think this is a way of trying to make a few more people happy in terms of getting a watch a little bit faster. The unsurprising component is that the grey and black model in steel was released at all, because of my second point, upgrades. I harp on this topic on a regular basis. Rolex wants you to buy the expensive model. Rolex wants you to go for precious metal. If you walk into an Omega store and want a Speedmaster, there are two options: the white in steel and the black in steel. That, or you go all in for the full gold, Canopus gold high-end models. That's not the case with Rolex. Everything in their lineup is geared towards the upgrade path. Everything at the steel level has an upgrade option. Typically, there'll be two-tone models, then you'll have the Oyster Flex models. From there, you go to full gold, and finally platinum and fully iced out models. The black-gray two-tone and full gold models came out last year. It was just a question of time before the steel option was introduced. The upgrade path is complete for that model. That brings me to upgrade variety. Recall for a moment how the steel Daytona is only available in two options. How many two-tone options are there? 4. Oyster Flex, I think it's 5 or 6. Full gold, about 12 or something like that. Platinum's only 2. Omega doesn't have 12 variants of the regular Speedmaster. Omega has a lot of different Speedmaster types, but gold, there's not a lot. Rolex reserves that variety for those expensive models because that's where the exclusivity is, and that's where the money is. It's the upscale customer that gets the options. Only when you get to that absolute upper end does the variety drop. For the Daytona, you drop down to 2 variants on platinum. That, again, conveys exclusivity. Pretty much every single watch released adds variety to the high end. The Deep Sea, the new variants of the Day Dates, the variants on the Sky Dweller. It's just adding variety to the most expensive models and catering to the wealthiest of Rolex customers. It's no surprise, of course, but everything Rolex does is either about protecting the longevity of the brand or making money. They discontinued the Yachtmaster 2, the watch most people see as the ugliest of the Rolex watches. It's gone, and that makes sense because it was likely not a great seller and was expensive to allocate manufacturing resources towards. So killing it made business sense. It does open up a space for a Milgauss or some other quirky model, but for now, Rolex has slimmed the line down overall, streamlining their production even more and have optimized even more for profit. The market is nowhere near as hot as it was 2 or 3 years ago. Rolex models still hold a lot of their value, but two-tone is available, gold is available. Stocks on some models are there to be bought with little or no waiting list. But when the market is down and your steel models are still relatively desirable, why add to the hype? Why would you throw out a Polar Explorer when you have little to no problem selling the Black Explorer? Why launch a Coke bezel when the Pepsi and the Batman are selling just fine? Rolex, I don't think at least, neither needed or wanted to fan the flames of steel watch desire, focusing instead of small releases that added some variety without adding a whole lot of cost and keeping demand at a, let's call it, manageable level. It's boring, but to me, if one brand was going to be fine with being a little bit boring, it was Rolex. Then there's the 1908. For me, the original 1908 and also the Cellini, with the exception of the moon phase, was a little bit of a meh for me. The 1908 is still not my favorite, but still, for now, based on the videos and pictures, the new 1908 looks really good. But that's not what I want to discuss. I want to discuss the platinum guilloche dial and display casebacks. When I saw the 1908, my mind instantly went to the Patek 5178G minute repeater. That's a significantly more complicated watch and a massively more expensive watch, but visually the two do a lot of the same things. I've maintained, and I still maintain, that Rolex isn't trying to become high horology. They're not trying to become a part of the Holy Trinity. Rolex is high quality mass production, but the 1908 to me is addressing a different segment. The machine-turned guilloche dial has an horological-esque air to it. A display caseback with high levels of finishing and a gold rotor also dips its toes into that horology segment. And it got me thinking. Rolex made the Deep Sea Challenge to build its credentials as the ultimate dive watchmaker. They've been doing that for years. And the 1908 is playing the part of building the horological street cred of Rolex. Again, they're not trying to become Patek, but they are trying to appeal to that story of horological craft and skill. That's what that watch does, at least to me. Rolex has a lock on engineering superiority and precision and durability. But with this watch, they try to tell even more a story that they are also master horological watchmakers, more so than they usually do. Even though it's machine-turned, it's still quite impressive. Looking purely at the models is not a very exciting year. The GMT is nice, the Deep Sea is a brick, and the 1908 is cool, but probably not one a lot of people are going to buy. But this year really illustrates how Rolex always manages their brand as a whole. No one decision is taken in isolation. They spread out demand for the GMT. They maintained their upgrade path approach. They provided variety to the wealthy and discontinued models that were bad for business, at least relatively speaking. And they are slowly building a stronger story about their horological chops, separate from engineering precision and durability. Whether you like it or not, Rolex is stronger than ever. As for me, if you want a GMT, then the new one will be easier to get once the initial release hype dies down, but it's still going to be on the waiting list. The 1908 line in general is a sub-retail model, and the Platinum will be too over time. The Deep Sea is eventually going to be heavily discounted for the few that end up getting produced. Those were my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.